Hello, I'm David Breeden. I'm the Senior Minister at First Unitarian Society of Minneapolis, a historically humanist congregation, and this is Coffee and Wisdom. When we look at some of the ideas that have come into Unitarian Universalism, humanism, and just in the U.S. culture at large, trying to get a better understanding of spiritual, religious, and what all this means. Today, I want to really look at someone who re-energized the entire idea of the esoteric, and that is Helena, better known as Madame Blavatsky, 1831 to 1891. This is her portrait here. She was Russian and came to the U.S. after traveling all over the world, or at least that's what she said she did. This really brings in the popular understanding of Hinduism, especially Hinduism, but also Buddhism and other religious traditions, looking at Egyptian religion for the first time in the Western world as something that might have some kind of truth in it. So this really very much goes into the 19th century idea when you had seances and all kinds of this kind of thing. So Madame Blavatsky invented something called Theosophy, and the word made up, Theos, God, and Sophia, wisdom, where we get philosophy, of course, and she's talking about divine wisdom. Now, how does her divine wisdom work? Well, claim number one of Theosophy is that there is an absolute spiritual truth and once a universal human religion. The first part of this is very much part of the one mountain, many paths idea that we've seen that was very popular in the 19th century and still remains something that a good many liberal religionists think that there is some kind of absolute truth out there. Her further claim, though, is that at one time all human beings practiced that particular universal religion. So what was it becomes the question. Also corollary with that is claim number two, the human race can become one and whole again. This is very late 19th century into early 20th century thought that somehow we're going to universalize our ideas and make all the world one, and we will have one government, etc. So very much a part of the time. Claim three, the purpose of human life is spiritual emancipation. Now, this is one of the more interesting things. We've talked before about how are we talking about just the individual psyche, or are we talking about collective psyches? Are we talking about individuals transcending and then going into some sort of a corporate community? What does that mean? Interesting question. And then claim number four, reincarnation after death according to karma. She got the idea from the Buddhists and the Hindus and brought it into a more popular spiritualist American understanding. And today, many Christians believe in karma. So it's an interesting way of seeing how ideas get mixed into the spiritual understandings of people. I pulled this from the Theosophical Society website, the Theosophical Society of America. It says it has a vision of wholeness that inspires a fellowship united in study, meditation, and service. It has a mission of encouraging open-minded inquiry into world religions, philosophy, science, and the arts in order to understand the wisdom of the ages, respect the unity of all life, and help people explore spiritual self-transformation. Notice how that's going right down that list of the four things they believe in. Has an ethic holding that our every action, feeling, and thought affect all other beings, and that each of us is capable of and responsible for contributing to the benefit of the whole. All sounds very good. Interesting little symbol there. And let's take a closer look. So the motto of the Theosophy Society is there is no religion higher than truth. There is no religion higher than truth. So in other words, all the religions have some truth, but we got to put them together in order to get this bigger truth. Compare that to the Esalen Institute motto that I talked about last week, no religion takes the flag. And again, you see how this popular idea that all religious traditions have some truth in them, but none of them exactly get it right. This is going to go permeate through American culture. So the symbols that are in this particular symbol. One is the Om, and that's at the top, and in Sanskrit is read from right to left, Om. That is the syllable that represents the unity of all creation, and it's what many meditators use as a mantra, Om. And of course, a lot of people have that on their wall at various places. The second symbol is a little more disturbing for us nowadays. That's the swastika. In Sanskrit, that's the sign for good, and also the symbol for the rising sun. If you notice, looking quickly here, this is the actual Sanskrit, and it was the Nazis who turned it on its side. But it's always been the idea is it's a moving symbol because the sun does rise after all. So interesting. Ouroboros is the snake that's swallowing its own tail, and that is a symbol of infinity. Christianity has made the snake bad, Garden of Eden and that kind of thing. Most human religions, however, like snakes because they shed their skin. It's an idea of change and a symbol of infinity. This is also true in Norse religions. And then we've got the two triangles. Looks like a Star of David, maybe. One is pointing up, and that is toward the spirit world, and the other is pointing down, and that's the material world. And of course, we know, those of us who have been studying this for a while with Coffee and Wisdom, that's going right back to Greek dualism. That's Plato all over again with this idea of an absolute truth and then a material world that kind of messes up the truth. And we don't get to the real truth until we get totally into a spiritual life. That's the idea of the dualism. And then the Ankh there in the middle. Again, we're going to look a little bit at Egyptian religions now. The anthropologists were discovering these things during the 19th century, especially British anthropologists, and they were bringing them back. Of course, we also know nowadays that the Christian cross is a use of the Ankh, and it is the symbol of life. All right, so there we have this symbology, all pulling this together to say that all religions have some kind of truth in them. You all know the word occult. It comes from occluded or hidden or secret, and Blavatsky ignited interest in the esoteric, the spiritual, the supernatural that continues even unto today. And yes, this is our Roswell operation on a little green man, as it's often called. UFOs, aliens, various conspiracy theories, all of those are part of this idea of some sort of a occult knowledge out there. And really, you don't see that earlier in world culture until the 19th century. So Blavatsky made conflicting claims about her life and her travels, though she was the first Russian woman to become a U.S. citizen. This is actual historical fact. Whether or not she went to Tibet, which is very unlikely, in the day the borders were closed to Europeans, so she probably didn't do that. She said she did. Going to Africa, going to South America, she sure got around a lot. She died at age 59, so it's a little bit questionable how much she actually got around the world, but she had a very rich imagination anyway. And from these travels, she claimed that there are these occult masters all over the world who have the real secret truth knowledge of the real workings of reality. And she was getting these messages from the masters and writing them down and communicating them. So really her ideas are a mishmash of Buddhism, Hinduism, Christian mysticism, and alchemy from the Middle Ages, but she repackaged it in some very interesting ways. Of course, you see how these symbols permeate the alchemical understanding that alchemy did eventually lead to very serious chemistry, but it also has a lot of things that are a little bit wonky in it. And of course, we have the the good little hat here. We've got Mickey becoming a sorcerer and instead of an apprentice. And of course, over here, we have the great sorting hat from Harry Potter. All of that is really coming out of an idea that there is some kind of esoteric knowledge out there just below the surface of reality. So what were they waiting for? Because they were waiting for a savior to come along, those Theosophists, and they called him Lord Maitreya. And he is the guy I will be talking about tomorrow. So if you want to go on an interesting ride around the internet, start looking up Madame Blavatsky and the Theosophy Society. Meanwhile, you can find First Unitarian Society of Minneapolis on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and you can help us out on our website, firstunitarian.org, donate, or also on PayPal. Thanks a lot, and I'll see you tomorrow.